Good. Yeah, so we stopped with Cecilia saying very rightfully that also Lot 2 is hosting the angels when they come from Abraham, and so you can go very deep. I don't want to go too deep into all these stories, but it shows really how much the question of Hachnasat Orchim, of welcoming the guest, is crucial in the fundamental in the Jewish history and Jewish story and in the Torah. So it comes before many other things. I want to we'll share here a document, and we can. Good. So, focus on you. There's my rabbi Rav Yehuda Mital Zatzal. If there was one source from the Talmud that he came back to time after time after time, said it, I can't imagine how many times. This is the source. So if you only remember one thing from this shiur today, please remember this source, because really it's one of the essence of Judaism in so many ways, and it tells about how we should be as people. So here we can see from Talmud Bavli, Masechet Sotah, Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina said, what is the meaning of the verse, after the Lord your God shall you follow? Achrei Hashem Elochem telechu. Is it possible for a person to walk and follow the Shekhinah, the divine presence? So of course it's not to walk after, follow God, go after Him, which is the word that the Torah all the time when it talked about Avraham and Chanoch, the way they worshipped God or followed God's demands, it was go after God or go in front of God. This is a saying. So how can you walk and follow the Shekhinah, God's presence? Rather, this teaches us to emulate God's attributes. Midot, the way God shows his way of doing things, not himself. Now you don't walk after him, but you're supposed to follow the way God did things. And then come a list of these examples. Just as he clothed the naked, as we say in the morning, as it is written, and God made for Adam and his wife garments of skin, and he clothed them. So must you clothe the naked. So you need to give clothes to those who don't have clothes. This is, of course, a bit less relevant in a world today that clothes cost almost nothing. It's very easy to find clothes, but it is a very important thing to remember. For example, to give clothes to the poor and all of that. Second-hand shops in Europe, we have lots of these from the Red Cross and such places that you can donate clothes and so on. So this is one. God gave clothes to the naked. We should need to do the same. God visits the sick. As is written, God appeared to him, Avraham, who was recovering from his circumcision in the plains of Mamre. So, so must you visit the sick. Kadosh Baruch Hu nichem avelim. God comforts the mourners, as it is written, and it was after the death of Avraham that God blessed Yitzchak, his son. So must you comfort mourners, just like God came to Isaac after Abraham died. Then you're supposed to. הקדוש ברוך הוא קבר מתים, דכתיב ויקבור אותו בגיא. God buried the dead, buried the dead, as it is written, he buried him in the valley, buried Moshe, so shall you bury the dead. And my rabbi, who spoke so many times about this thing. We have many other stories in the Torah where God acts. But the Talmud here, Rabbi Chama Bar Chanina, chooses only aspects of Ben Adam Lechavero. So it doesn't say follow God in anything God does. When God did vengeance and the Talmud doesn't bring these stories. Talmud only brings the stories where God do what we call masim tovim and good deeds for your neighbor, for your friend, for the sick, for the need. So these are the aspects. So this is what we I would say this is one of the main sources to talk about all our mitzvot, that we need to follow the footsteps of God in this sense of doing these good deeds. These are the attributes we need to follow God's attributes. Yes, so and now we come to the question of specifically of Hachnasat Orchim, and what was said before, what was connected to the story of Abraham, where it comes also here. It's a very good example also of how the Jewish halakha, Jewish law works. Right? Where do I find the rule of Hachnasat Orchim? In the Talmud, we don't have a masechet of Hachnasat Orchim. So many rules come from weird places that you wouldn't expect. And here, this rule comes from Masechet Shabbat. In the rules of Shabbat, there's a specific small halacha of when is it allowed to move baskets because you need to make room. You need to make, so you're not allowed to do that in every area. So the Talmud here, Talmud Masechet Shabbat, Talmud Bavli Shabbat 127 says, one may move even 4 or 5 baskets of straw. Okay, so you don't need it on Shabbat, right? There's no use of that at Shabbat, and usually something like that would be muktzeh, right? Because it doesn't belong to Shabbat, so you're not. It's something you use in regular days. So you can so this is something that you're not supposed to touch on Shabbat. You're not supposed to move them. But when is it you're allowed to move these baskets? For 2 reasons: due to guests and due to suspension of the study hall of the Beit Midrash. So for one is for hosting, the other is for studying Torah. These are the 2 only reasons you're allowed to move, but you're not allowed to not in the storeroom, not lo et ha'otzar. When it's a storeroom, then it's completely a muktzeh. And so the rule, I think, it's a side rule regarding Shabbat rules about things you're allowed to move or not to move. But then comes the Talmud and say one of the most famous quotation starts from Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan comes and says, hospitality towards guests is as great as rising early to go to the study hall, as the Mishnah teaches, due to guests and due to suspension of the Torah study in the study hall. So they say here, you see that studying Torah, Talmud Torah, that usually is seen as maybe the greatest mitzvah. Every morning we say the Talmud Torah keneged kulam, that Talmud Torah, the way compared to all other mitzvot, when we can talk a lot about why this is important, but this is not the topic today. So Rabbi Yochanan comes and says, oh, you should know that the one mitzvah that is just as important as Limud Torah, which is hospitality of guests, because the Mishnah here puts the two equal, right? You're allowed to move these baskets to hospitality of guests and to evacuate and to the suspension of the study hall. So these are the two. So Rabbi Yochanan says they're equal. And then comes Rav Dimi from Nardea and says, no, it is even greater than rising early to the study. It's more than going early to study as it teaches, due to the guest, and only afterwards, and due to suspension of the study, because it says mipnei umipnei. It comes afterwards, which means hospitality of guests is even more important than studying. So if right now there's someone downstairs knocking on your door, wants to come in while you sit and study, you should stop studying and go and welcome the guest, because as Rav Dimi says, this is more important to host the guest. And then comes the very famous of the sentence of Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda said that Rav said, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, hospitality towards guests is greater than receiving the divine presence, as it is written. And he said, Lord, if now I have found favor in your sight, please pass not from your servant. Where comes this quotation from? Anyone remembers? Is there a Torah? Yes, Florian?
From Abraham.
Exactly. Abraham said, Vayomer Hashem, Imna matzati chem b'necha, na tavoru me'al avdecha. Yukach lamat mayim, v'chatzu raglechem. So, Abraham, it's the story of Abraham. We could open and just study it, but it would we don't have that much time left for the day. But Abraham, it said that God visited Abraham, just like we read before, right? Visiting the sick. It says, "Vayera elav Hashem belonei mamre v'hu yoshev." So it says that God came to visit Abraham. When and we read in the Jewish tradition that he came to visit Abraham while he was sick, after his circumcision. In the 3 days after circumcision, as Abraham was circumcised as 99 years old. I don't recommend. It's much more harder for the body, and then Abraham goes and sees, and it says, that he looks up and sees 3 men walking. So he leaves God and go and welcoming these guests. So God, with all respect, thank you for the visit, but I have guests, so I have to go and take care of them. So, and from this sentence that we use a lot, Hachnasat Orchim mekabalat pnei Shechina. Even you have God in your presence, but there are people that need hospitality. You need to leave God and go to welcome the guests and take care of them. That is quite a. I would say it's very clear that the Talmud here they compete about talking about how great hospitality is, and this gives this direction. I think that they're very found this from the Maharal. Can I have you help who the Maharal is? Anyone? Florian again? Yes.
The Maharal of Prague.
Yes.
The very famous Talmudist. Yeah. Can't remember the full name, but yeah, no, Yehuda ben Löw. That's the one.
Right. the 12 points. Maharal Prague, almost all of you remember the name when it comes to the story of the Golem. That's why it's very famous around the world because of the creating this creation. But the story of the Golem came 100 years after he died, so he didn't know he created the Golem. But the Maharal himself is a great Jewish scholar and a leader. And he comes in his in Chidushei Agadot, he writes as follows: Rav Yehuda maintained that hospitality is even greater than receiving the divine presence. The reason for this is that although it is possible to a certain extent to connect with the divine presence, this relationship is somewhat limited. For there is, after all, an unbridgeable distance between man and God. As God itself tells us, no human can see my face and live. So there's something that it's limited. Regardless how close we can come to God, there's a gap that can't. However, it is different regarding hosting a human guest, whom one honors and has a fondness for. One can connect completely with the image of God that is in this person. This way, hospitality is greater than receiving the divine presence, because connection with divine presence is limited. But connecting with the divine image embodied by the person is complete. So you can say in a way that also with hospitality, with seeing God's image in every person, you connect to God in a better way than connecting to God himself, like trying in some kind of, I don't know, meditative or praying way or something that connect to God. This will be somewhat limited, but the best way to connect to God will be through helping other people and see God that within these people. This is the direction that can use in this connection. So there are a lot of when we come to this the question of how to host in hospitality, I have to admit there's a big difference between stop connecting to like to see each other. There is a difference between rules of hospitality in the Talmud time and the rules today. And why that? The world is so different today. If you really want to see the last place that the rules of hospitality of the Talmudic time still existed, you should have gone to Bedouin tents, like the real what was until I think 30-40 years ago. It also barely exists anymore. And in these places, you also had very, very strong rules about hospitality, that you're not, for example, they had the laws of the desert. If there was a person goes by, you have to host him, and you're not allowed to ask to where his whereabouts, where he comes from, and there's someone in need, you have to help him. After 3 days, he has to, but you have to give them like a shelter for 3 days. Then he is allowed to leave without saying anything. If he wants to stay, then he needs to say more, to not make any trouble. For example, if there's someone who's fleeing because he did something wrong or things like that. But the rules was so crucial that people that are going by in the desert, in the long way, think of the wandering Jew, right? The one who walked for the needs of hospitality was huge, and I think in a way you can't compare it to the world today. People don't travel the same way. When people travel, usually it's not because they are in need, but it's because they go on a good vacation. Like in the past, the need of travel was because there were the economic needs. There was not enough one place, so you have to go around everywhere, sell things, and so on. So it was a different time. So the need was much greater when you saw someone. Today, it's the travelers today. And Moshe David can already say you're unmuted, so I know you might change what I say, but in a way it did change. It's today the travelers that comes to our place, the tourists. It's a luxury guests, right? It's not someone who went to enjoy a vacation and have a lot of money. It's not someone who is in need of a shelter and a. Does it mean that hosting guests lost its relevance? No, I think it's even more crucial to learn these rules and try to see how can we apply them as relevant for today. A good example where here I can use Moshe David. Moshe David lives in Tekoa, and until today in these areas in Gush Etzion, the way that people travel is the most of them travel by hitchhiking, right? Of Moshe David, you still do that, and that is a great, and you still have it in Israel, especially in northern Israel and in settlements. This is where people still really a lot of them hitchhike, and some other places. And this is a great example of someone who is in need, right? Is in need of traveling, and you can host them in your place. And I learned from one of them, rabbi, who said maybe it's the most similar place that you have today to classical hospitality that we learned from ancient times is in a hitchhiking, where you can really help someone in need, in cold, who needs a shelter, stands alone and wet in the rain or I don't know what, and you open your door, your home, your car, you open for and help them to travel. But the and I can also I can even admit in my own perspective how I would say there will be a different here from Copenhagen, Oslo, and Malmö. Why do I say there's a difference between? Because Malmö is a less popular tourist destination than Copenhagen, and right? I hope I don't offend anyone here from Malmö when I said it, but it's less a tourist attraction. Can we agree? Yes, it makes sense. And why do I say that? Because when I was a child, every time I visited my grandfather, they had a huge Shabbat table, and he always came back from the synagogue with 2-3 extra guests, because we always came on vacation, and there were tourists around. So they came along and went home. But when I was a child, there were in synagogue there were maybe 5-6 tourists at all for everyone. Today in the summer, there are more than half of the synagogues sometimes are tourists. So the like if you need to host all the tourists, it means you need to open a guest house. It's not the same place where there are a few, because the world today is so richer. So there are much more people who go as a visitor, tourist, and I have to admit from a halachic perspective, it's not the same level of hosting guests, like the need in this connection, and how much do you need to go out of your way to help them. It's not the same demand. And we need to try to find new ways. How can we do this relevant? Because hosting is first of all for someone who in need. It's not hosting the guests who when you have some that also hosting friends, or hosting friends, or hosting family and such. But it's not the same level of hosting. I do think there are a few places when we can try to think of a hosting, and in this connection, I would say actually less tourists who come from far, but try to think of people in your community that are a bit alone, or poor people in the community who needs a place. Those people who are, and sometimes then it's not the most fun thing to do, but this is part of the thing that a way of thinking. When we host, not only host those, if we host our friends because we want to enjoy the company, then we are doing Hachnasat Orchim in a sense, some aspect of it, but we do it for our own good. We don't do it for the sake of hosting, of doing Hachnasat Orchim, doing this mitzvah. We enjoy it. We do it for our fun, and there is an aspect that we're supposed to help someone in need in this sense of Hachnasat Orchim. Yes, Sarah?
No, but it makes me think about all the refugees, like you come from war or climate areas where you can't live anymore, and how we, as Europe, then don't really take care of the people who's in real need, in a way.
Definitely. Yeah.
So there are still a lot of people in great need of hospitality.
Yes, you're right. We have people around who are coming now. Usually, when they come as let's talk about the people who come here, right? Because there's one thing is going to the places where they are in the refugee camps in Africa, and so that I would say that's a whole different level, which is also various. Like I would say, if you can do something about it, it's you should, and definitely a huge mitzvah. But we have lots of refugees coming here, and we have centers and lots of people in Jewish communities and in other. I would say this is exactly the place where you can see how much faith communities helped as communities in places where the country didn't really come in. The needs to give them a place, not only give them a shelter, a place to sleep, but visiting and talking to them and community-wise. And we still have people in our centers in Denmark, are in Sweden too. And definitely we have an important place. And now I don't go into the politics questions of how many. Of course, there are countries can discuss how many they can bring in, and there are different opinions regarding that. But people who are here, that's not a question. Like the question of people who came here who are in need. Then the halachic position will be immediately, of course, that they need help. So thank you for bringing also that. It shows how much I'm like so occupied about in my Jewish hosting is always like a Shabbat hosting and meal hosting and all of that. And Joe, thank you, Sarah, for showing my blindness, because of course this apply these two. Really, I really thank you for saying that. Moshe David?
Yeah. A couple of comments. First, I think Hachnasat Orchim, as you're saying here, is an example of those in the previous, like you were saying, who were in need more. And then that's an example or a model of us always reaching out for those in need. And we saw that in this week's parasha, and we see it throughout the Torah, that we were a minority, we were slaves, and therefore we should always be the ones who are reaching out. I also think that the principle of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha that we saw, in that it's always thinking in your mindset of, if I were in that situation, what would I be needing, is relevant both to the refugees, it's relevant to any way, especially I hear you're stepping a bit away from the tourists because I think they bother you a lot when they come to the community. But there's many ways that it's very relevant, even in terms of from a rabbinical perspective, creating a kosher list for the tourists so that they can know how to manage. So it's not only, right, I made such a list in Malmö, such for the Israelis in Hebrew, just so that I know they're staying in hotels, so I have to make a special menu, for, like a list for them, so they're not going to have cooking utensils. Yeah. What can they buy? That's a small example.
Yeah, we did it too here and in Oslo, of course.
And so I think it's always thinking, if I was in such a situation, so you have an Israeli tourist who's coming for Shabbat, they of course there's a security aspect that we all go through in the synagogue, etc. But once that is okay, so maybe you're not expected. If they decide to go on a tourist trip with their entire family to Copenhagen, it doesn't mean you're expected to host them, but to do what you can to assist them is definitely a part of the mitzvah. What you mentioned about the Bedouin tents, I think it's still very existing in many different Jewish communities around the world. I know in different cities in Europe, they have close to central hospitals. They have apartments that maybe connects to your next mitzvah, Bikur Cholim. But in Amsterdam, for example, and other places, they have an apartment that was bought by the Jewish community just to host families on Shabbat whose sick ones will be are in the hospital, for example. And you have the same in Jerusalem, in Shaarei Tzedek, and many other places in Ein Karim, where you'll actually have apartments which were bought by Jews in order so that families will be able to stay there close to their sick ones. We went through on a
No, if I can add, I think one of the sad thing, the side effect that happened with the Chabad houses, that one of the greatest respect we can say to Chabad is about the hospitality. They put it at the huge agenda for them, and they do it really in the greatest way possible. But in so many ways, what happened was that they took it from people. So people stopped hosting because you can send everyone to Chabad, and that I think is a sad thing, right? That they did something because they how to say, made it an institution, then something that was part of so many families. Like there were so many families that knew that when they go to synagogue, they try to find if there's a guest or two. But because you have a Chabad house anywhere in the world, so then people stopped doing that because it's so easier to send them over there. And I think it's also something that we can think about. Should we try to and think how many times these meetings by someone who is completely a stranger that came to synagogue, and you suddenly host, and you find great connections and people and stories and such. How much do we need it in the time that we are more close in our bubbles, both in the social networks and all our small bubbles, and these guests can change things around, and this is important too.
I just want to mention one practical thing for everyone here, I think, is that to offer to know that when you're going away for Shabbat, for example, that you can offer it and you can say to the community, to the rabbi, oh, I'm not here for Shabbat if there happens to be anyone coming in. And that's done in many, many communities. And I think it's in our community in Tekoa, for example, it's a given. If you go away for Shabbat, you let everyone know, and then people can host their parents. Maybe they don't have room in their home for their parents. So if they're living in a small home suddenly, so that's a good thing, which is very practical. Just let your rabbi or the community know and make that a normal thing. I'm going away for Shabbat. I'm going for the weekend. I'm going away for a few weeks in the summer. And of course, there's another side of responsibility that whoever brings in the guests will bring in people who are responsible and make sure that nothing is damaged, and of course,
especially if you will live in walking distance from synagogue, because it's even more needed in that aspect. Yes, but I can see two, Esther and then Sophie.
Yes, very quickly. We convert. Sorry, we convert. Sometimes we are a little bit outside. We are not being asked to come to any Shabbat meals or anything, but we are still in, and we want to be in, and we want to grow. And then the other thing is this, that nowadays we have to be so careful who we are inviting. Like I'm living alone, I cannot just make a Shabbat meal for anybody at all. So also I have to think that who am I? I'm from a home from very high hospitality. Our doors were always open and a lot of guests and cousins coming. So I'm suffering that I cannot be giving the hospitality so much I would like. But this is something, how could we increase this among us converts and how could we break a little bit the barrier about this?
I think we should create it by doing it, not by demanding and expecting, but by doing. This is the only like I can tell you how many times I said that in synagogue, in sermons and such, talking to him. I think at least the 10, 15 times I spoke about this and told people, try to host someone you didn't host before. Try to see those who were alone converts who come from the outside and need a place. And I would say that that you are our main source regarding that. If the community is not good enough to do it, then we will have to do it. We shouldn't wait until others do it, and then we'll do it, and maybe others will follow our lead. Sophie, yes, and then we'll continue. We have more rules also regarding the halachic aspects of these. Yes, Sophie.
Yeah, it's a little bit similar to what Esther said. It's just like coming as a convert, I've been extremely lucky to be invited home to people. It's like I've been so busy, I actually haven't had a Shabbat lunch since Rosh Hashanah. But
Wonderful.
I really see that the people who's been the best inviting me is people who's not, what can you say, like raised and born in the community, but like newcomers, like converts, or actually the lonely people, and older people who are sitting, alone. So I think, at least I can only speak for the Copenhagen group, that we are really, really good at like taking care of each other and hosting new people joining. So maybe it is something that should be addressed to, what can you say, the original team, or like what can you say, like the families that been here for generations, that they should maybe be a little better to.
It was approached quite a few times in the past. I'm always
great way to to get together across, and it just creates a better community overall when you have people on a more personal level, not only like 5 minutes chit chat talk.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really giving both to be hosted and to have guests.
Yes, Victoria?
Yeah, because it's not always easy for converts to actually host outside of the convert community, and understandably, not everyone is comfortable with coming to eat at a non-halachically Jewish person.
No, that's not an issue here. Not for Danish Jews. They eat anywhere regardless. And they know that if it's a kosher question, they know that the best places to eat kosher white will be the converts, much better than most. So I wouldn't say that
as a general rule, like not just Copenhagen specific, but as a general rule, it's
I have an
consideration that we have to have as well.
Yes,
whenever.
But I have assumption that in the Nordic countries, the situation is the same as in Denmark. That converts usually will be the best regarding this, also in the process, and not only. You're right, there are specific rules that you can be aware of, but this is more for the kosher shiurim and.
Yes. Rav Jair, Rav Jair, just one last practical thing, that Hachnasat Orchim is not only hosting in your home. If you have someone who shows up at the shul, and I'm sure that everyone here in this room does this, then approaching that person and expressing interest, hospitality is in the heart as well, and just it should be a normal thing, and I'm sure it is for you. I think you all felt it, those who are going through the Giyur process, how important it is. Someone shows up, just approach them and say, hey, where you're from. And then maybe you'll also learn that they're in need of a meal. But at least to do that, I think it's an important practical thing that I'm sure you all do. Just I wanted to put that also as a part of Hachnasat Orchim.
Yes. Okay, and I want to continue to a rule of that is also connected to Hachnasat Orchim that really covers so many aspects. But one of the rules that we actually have is the rule of Livayah, of accompanying a guest after he's when he's leaving. It starts from the Talmud Sotah, where it's I don't want to go to the details of the. Never mind the halachic details how it was built, but it concludes with this saying by Rav Yehuda Marav: anyone who accompanies his friend 4 cubits in the city will come to no harm. So it's connected to the basic of that we're supposed to accompany someone. You shouldn't travel alone. It in the past was seen as something dangerous. Let's say it will be similar to if you have a host. If you host someone very late at night in a place that is complicated, maybe follow them to the train station or think that in a place that can be dangerous. But the rule, the minimal rule is that this arba amot, at least just like symbolically, the 4 cubits, which is not a lot, but it's also connected to a spiritual. They say, for example, the Talmud there says that if you walk alone, then you should study Torah to protect you, like because the protection is connected to also a spiritual place you are in when you walk in this place. So you have an obligation to organize. You can see Rambam comes and says the reward of escorting guests is greater than all. This is actually escorting the guest after is even greater than the hosting. It is the institution established by Avraham Avinu. He would feed passerby and then escort them on the way. Hospitality is as great as greeting the divine presence, and escorting guests is even greater than extending hospitality. The sages taught, whoever does not accompany one's guest is as if he has spilled blood. This is connected to the way it was studied before, that the Beit Din, the Talmud, when the part that I said I wouldn't go through, but I can manage, I can say it talks about a situation that was found a dead body next to a city. And the elderly of the city, you have to say, our hand didn't shed this blood. We are not part of this thing. And how can they say that they didn't take part of it? It's by saying, rather they mean to declare, they have to declare that the victim did not come to us, and then we let him take his leave without food, and we did not see him, and then leave him alone to depart without accompaniment. So this is the soul. It said you have responsibility. You have responsibility, and from there it is studied that if you left someone alone, it's and dangerous, then you're part of putting them into danger and shedding blood in this connection. So there's I would say a security aspect, but also a spiritual aspect. And you can see that the spiritual aspect, Rambam goes and gives a different. It comes from the place of studies. As I said, you can study instead, and he gives different. I won't go into the details because we don't have a lot of time. So, but in principle, this is a very important part that following someone, accompany them after is also a mitzvah. I always accompany someone who came to me also to a meeting. I accompany them at least to like a few steps outside of the door, show them respect. But the spiritual accompany has also it means something for them. Like when they like that you see them also when you follow them on the way out. You show that you don't only okay, you are here, so I help you, but I just want to get off of you as quick as possible. No, you also walk them out. This is or as the joke always here goes, that the difference between I learned that the difference between now I'm going to do something you're not allowed to do, right? This generalizing, but it's a joke. Okay, I don't really mean it. They talk about the difference between Jews and Brits, and that say that the Brits they leave without saying goodbye, and with Jews they say goodbye without leaving. That it continues. It's not right. It's not true. Don't use it. But yes, you can see many times that going out takes longer and longer. And this is also something because, like, yes, really show them that you have an interest and don't just want to kick them out of the door as. Which doesn't mean that as a guest you have to stay as much as you're allowed to be aware as a guest, not to exploit the demands of Hachnasat Orchim. We really don't have a lot of time, so I have to. I brought one more regarding this the hospitality of the poor, but the Halacha says exactly this in Shulchan Aruch regarding the Yom Tov, about how we have to be happy, sameach v'tov lev b'moed. It is an obligation for a man to be happy and in good spirits on the holiday. Him, his wife, his kids, and all who are with him. And then it comes, and it adds, one is obligated to feed the stranger, the orphan, and the widow, along with other people, connected directly to Simchat Chag. Because it says in the pasuk, "V'hager asher bisharecha." We say it so many times. We talk about our family, but we go all the way until the foreigner that lives among us, that he is also connected. And specifically, when we talk about the Chag, there's an extra mitzvah in Chag to invite people who are alone. So it can be someone who's come from the outside, either convert, someone who's poor, someone who just like we all know in our community that these people are a bit lonely, so it's even a greater mitzvah to invite them, especially for Chagim. Yes, let's go quickly to Bikur Cholim too, which is another very important rule. And historically, you have to remember that so many of these rules, for example, didn't take in consideration a possibility of a social democrat state. Like the community and the rules of halacha were connected on to that. If we don't take responsibility, no one will. Like, this is a community responsibility, and every individual of the community to take care of them. It's actually harder today to be aware of these people in need, because we already rely on the system. Because we know there's a system, then we just let the system do it instead of us. And we have to remember there is an halachic aspect that we need to take care yes, David said I'll add 10 minutes because of the technical problem in the beginning. So here the source of Bikur Cholim, that is very important. Rav Chalbo fell sick. We go to Talmud Bavli Nedarim. Rav Kahana went and announced that Rav Chalbo is sick. No one came to visit. So there was no one visiting him. So it was quite a thing. Rav Kahana said, didn't the following incident happen that teaches us the importance of visiting the sick? Once one of Rabbi Akiva's disciples fell sick. The sages did not come to visit until Rabbi Akiva himself came. And due to the fact that they swept and mopped the room, the patient lived. The Talmud actually said not only mopped and swept, but kibdo verivtzo lefanav. There's also an aspect of respect. They respected him, and honored him, also helped to clean the area. The patient lived. He then said to Rabbi Akiva, "My master, you have given me life." Rabbi Hechitani. Rabbi Akiva went out and taught, whoever does not visit the sick, it is as if he has spilled blood. So if you didn't do the thing that you could do to help, then in a way you have blood on your hands. It's every individual has a responsibility to do that, and this is one of the main sources. We have many others. We mentioned before the one of God visiting the sick, that we need to follow His way, but we see how much it's important. And we have two aspects that come when we talk about visiting the sick. Rambam brings them in Shara Michush when we talk about those who are Ramban. Sorry, not Rambam. Remember who Ramban is? Nachmanides. It's a bit after Rambam's time. He one of the greatest rabbis for of their time, and important until today, both on the Torah, but also in Halacha and in many others. And he comes in Sha'ar Michus and says, we learn from here, the story of Rabbi Akiva, that we visit the sick in order to sweep and mop the floor and take care of all the need pertaining to his illness. So this is one aspect, all the physical helping him in his sickness. And we learn from here, from this account, that we visit the sick in order to improve the patient's mood and provide peace of mind by having friendly company. So we have two goals. One is to help with the sickness, with a physical need, the other with the spiritual needs. These are the two aspects that the reasoning that we have to take care and visit the sick. Though, and I have to add, there's another one that there's a tradition. How big is this help in the Talmud Nedarim? Rabbi Chama bar Chanina said, one who visits a sick person removes 1/60th of his suffering. Okay, so if you do that, you remove 1/60th. And then they come to Talmud with a very good question. So if this is so, then if 60 people were to visit the patient, then it would fully recover. So we just need to take care that 60 people visit sick, and then the problem is solved. And Rav responded, each visitor removes 1/16th of what is left. So it's not it's not a solution to bring 60 people at once and then the problem is solved. It's a more spiritual aspect of this relief. But I would also add that yes, there's a difference between the first visitor and the number 15. If there are so many people visited, then it's better to be the first one, right? So try to think of the one who's not visited, not though everyone visits, because the effect of the help, of the spiritual, you remembered, you're honored, someone takes care of you, is different when you are one of many who comes. Then the 1/60th part of the illness is much less when it's when you were number 20. But if you were the first one or the second, then it has a bigger effect and it's more important. So try regarding this, prefer those who less people visit than people who everyone visit. There are other aspects, but I would say that we do have some areas when we don't visit the sick, and the rules come saying that you should, but you should in a different way. And the Shulchan Aruch says, following the Talmud, one should not enter, en mevakrin. You should not come and visit the patient's room to visit him if he has a intestinal disorder, or he has a pain in his head, eye, or whole body that makes it difficult for him to talk. So we shouldn't insist on visiting the sick if it is not for the benefit of the sick. We can't say, yeah, but the halacha demands. We have it. So you can see here that the consideration could either be consideration to his embarrassment. That some people will be embarrassed because of the situation. So you have to be considerate. Okay, this is and there are areas where we need to be more careful. But you can do some other thing. You can the visitor should come to the hallway outside his room and inquire after his welfare. So come around, come to talk to the doctor, to the family next to the visitor should ask if the patient would like the visitor to come inside the room to sweep and mop the floor, so you can you can check in a way that won't be and the visitor should lean to a listening ear to his suffering and distress. And the last one, the visitor should pray for his recovery and health. So this is also an aspect. Why is it important to visit? The Talmud already start with this regarding this, that you should, part of visiting the sick is also asking for their recovery. The tefillah, which we believe has a power of itself, and we have also in many synagogues people who have a Bikur Cholim that they do out loud. Some of the places you can also add prayer for the sick in your everyday prayer. When we say Birkat Rofe Cholim, there is a place there where we can add a personal to ask for the people who are sick. In our synagogue, we do it as part of the sermon. When I talk, then we talk about all the ask for all those who are sick. But in many places, you say individually all the names of the sick. Sometimes you have like a long line. If you saw in many synagogues in Israel, the gabbai is saying the prayer out loud. But this is also, I think, a very important aspect. Yes, yes, almost David.
I just want to comment, just listening to the shiur, that there's a very strong element of community versus system that has come through, that you mentioned a few times. To summarize, in that we're living in systems which are much better than before, social systems of caring and that take care of many of the needs, but then that acts against the community sense of the responsibility that we should have as a community for one another. And that connects all of the aspects of what we've seen today, from Hachnasat Orchim to Bikur Cholim, and that in the synagogue, it's not only that you're praying, but that sense of, oh, there's someone in our community right now who is sick, and that we care for them, and that person knows that someone they will be told by their family, oh, the rabbi said a prayer for you on Shabbat. It's very important in that aspect. And in a larger aspect of the Jewish people, we see that today in terms of the prayers for the hostages and for the chayalim, in that there's a larger sense of a community as a Jewish people that we're mentioning name by name. In our synagogue, we all do it silently, and during the same Misheberach for the sick, we mentioned the special prayer for the hostages. So it's a sense of strengthening the community in the modern world and not relying on the system, I think, to sum that up.
Yes, and the part that I want to finish with was exactly specifically to us in the Nordic countries, that even more than in Israel and more than anywhere else in the world, that you have so much system that take care of those they need. And many times it come on with a great cost. And I can share like my personal story from my grandmother from my mother's side. She wasn't Jewish, and she lived in like an old age. She was 100% with 100% dementia, and she lived in such a place that everyone were like that. And people we came to visit quite a lot. My mother came from Israel at the time, and all the siblings, they try to make sure that there's always someone. There's not a long period without one of the children visiting her. But my grandmother lived in Denmark with not one child who lived in Denmark. Like she had 3 children, and all of them, 2 lives in Israel and 1 in Luxembourg. And the how is the personnel, the doctors and like those who worked in the place said that there were people there living that their children lives next by, and they barely visited their parents once a year, or had visitors. While my grandmother, none of her children lived in Denmark. She had people all the time visiting and being with her, and in so many ways we leave these people alone because we rely on the system. But the halacha is not only focused on the physical aspects of, oh, there's someone who change a diaper or give the medicine, or that's only one part of the Bikur Cholim. And I would say also Hachnasat, like the physical aspect, but there's the spiritual aspect, and there it's very critical to visit and to care, and that for the person to have this self-value, that they know that he's wanted, someone cares about them, and this is a very danger in our society, and that the halakha definitely demand that we take a personal responsibility on for these people, caring for them, and this is even more relevant in a place that does it instead, all the rest instead of us, because here it's easier to forget that because someone takes care of. So I think this is even more crucial here to see that spiritual, personal need that lies in not only the physical, practical need that is relevant. So thank you for today. Have a
and of course the technology that allows the positive, right? The technology that allows it.
Of course, we can visit by Zoom, and someone who's contagious, we can now see them, right? We can visit someone who's sick that we couldn't do in the past. So use technology, of course. Visiting by phone is not the same, but it's also good, like whatever we can.
Thank you very much, Rav Jair. Shavua Tov to everyone.
Thank you, Shavua Tov.
Thank you, Shavua Tov.
Thank you, Shavua Tov.
Thank you, Shavua Tov.